When I first took the job as a night security guard at Hollow Pines Cemetery, I thought it would be the easiest paycheck I'd ever make. Who in their right mind robs a graveyard? The interview had been short, the manager barely even looking up from his clipboard as he handed me the uniform. "You'll work the midnight to 6 a.m. shift," he said flatly, sliding a set of keys across the desk. "Do your rounds once every hour. Check the gates, check the chapel, check the cameras. That's it." He didn't smile, didn't welcome me to the team. It was as if he wanted me out of his office as quickly as possible. The cemetery itself was enormous, far larger than I imagined. By day, it almost looked peaceful. Rows of old marble headstones, angel statues draped in moss, and a chapel that looked more like a miniature cathedral. But by night, it was a different world. The lamps along the pathways were dim, their bulbs yellowed and weak. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the cracked pavement. The air smelled damp, heavy with the scent of soil and rotting leaves. My first walk across the grounds sent a chill crawling down my back, though I forced myself to laugh it off. Fear of the dark was for children, not grown men. My office was a small building near the front gate. Inside was a desk, a monitor bank showing fuzzy black and white feeds from a dozen cameras, and a battered radio that connected to the groundskeeper's shed. On my first night, I sat back in the creaking chair, sipping coffee, scrolling through my phone. For the first 2 hours, nothing happened. The cameras showed empty paths, silent rows of graves, still statues. Every now and then a raccoon or stray cat wandered past, their glowing eyes briefly catching the infrared lights. It was around 2 a.m. when I first noticed something odd. On camera 7, the one pointed at the north field, a figure appeared between the graves. At first I thought it was a mourner, tall, hunched, moving slowly with what looked like a cane. But then I realized the gate had been locked since sundown. No one should have been inside. I leaned closer to the screen. The figure was dressed in something long, flowing, though the grainy feed made it impossible to tell if it was a coat or a gown. It didn't walk so much as glide, drifting between the stones, pausing at each one as though reading the names. I grabbed the flashlight from my desk, muttering curses under my breath. First night on the job, and already some idiot had decided to hop the fence. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit me like ice. My breath hung in clouds as I made my way down the cracked path, boots crunching over gravel. The cemetery was silent, eerily so. No wind, no insects, nothing but the sound of my footsteps. I reached the north field, my beam sweeping across the graves. "Hey!" I called out, forcing authority into my voice. "You're not supposed to be here!" No answer. Just the faint creak of my boots and the distant drip of water from a gutter. I scanned left, then right. Empty. Completely empty. Confused, I hurried back to the office. On the monitor, camera 7 still showed the figure, only now it was closer, standing directly in the center of the screen, facing the camera. My stomach lurched. I had just been there. There was no one in the field. And yet on the greeny feed, the figure stood motionless, its head tilted upward as though staring straight at me through the lens. I froze, my coffee mug trembling in my hand. The feed flickered, static dancing across the screen, and then the figure was gone. I told myself I'd imagined it. Long shifts, weak coffee, tired eyes. It had to be some kind of trick of the camera feed. The human mind sees shapes and shadows. I'd read that somewhere. But deep down, I didn't believe my own excuse. I couldn't shake the image of that figure standing so still, so deliberate, its head tilted toward the camera as though it knew I was watching. The following nights, the strangeness only grew. On my second shift, the radios began crackling on their own. At first, it was just bursts of static, but then I started to hear faint murmurs, like voices overlapping, whispering in a language I couldn't recognize. Sometimes it sounded like my name. I tried to laugh it off, fiddling with the dials, blaming interference. But when the radio hissed, "Evan," my name, spoken in a drawn-out rasp, I shut it off completely. The cameras became worse, too. Camera 3, which covered the chapel, flickered constantly, and more than once I saw movement inside. Shadows pacing beneath the stained glass windows, long figures that seemed too tall to stand upright. One night, the chapel doors creaked open on their own. I hurried there with my flashlight, heart pounding. Inside, the pews were coated in dust and cobwebs draped the altar. No footprints, no intruders, just the heavy smell of old stone. By the third week, I began dreading each shift. Coffee no longer kept me awake, adrenaline did. Every creak of the building, every rustle of leaves outside set my nerves on edge. The figure appeared on camera 7 more than once, always standing in different spots, sometimes drifting between graves, sometimes pausing by the angel statue near the fence. Each time I went out to check, the field was empty. Yet the monitor insisted otherwise. Then came the night I stopped doubting. It was just after 3 a.m. when the alarms triggered. Motion sensor in the north field. I grabbed my flashlight, checked the monitor, and my blood ran cold. The figure was there again, but closer than ever before. Not drifting this time, standing, directly in front of the camera. Its head raised, its face, or what should have been a face, was nothing but a pale blur, a smear of static, as though the lens couldn't hold its image. And its arms, long and thin, hung too low, almost to its knees. The motion alarm beeped steadily as I stared, frozen, until something made me jolt upright. The sound wasn't only from the monitor, it was outside, the same beeping, faint but real, carried through the night. My breath caught. The sensors weren't just in the cameras, they were out there, mounted on poles across the cemetery, which meant it wasn't only the feed detecting movement. Something physical was triggering it, something real. For the first time, I considered quitting. I even reached for my phone to type a resignation email, but then the beeping stopped. When I looked again at the monitor, the figure was gone. The rest of the shift passed in silence. I sat at the desk, pale and shaking, every muscle tight, waiting for the next flicker, the next sound. But nothing came. When the sun finally rose, spilling golden light across the graves, I left faster than I ever had before. I didn't sleep that day. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured that faceless figure standing beneath the moonlight, its blurred head tilted upward as though smiling at me. And though I told myself I'd quit, I knew I wouldn't. Something in that place had already hooked me, something that wanted me to come back.
By the fourth week, I no longer entered Hollow Pines Cemetery as an employee. I entered as prey. Every night began the same. I unlocked the small office, sat at the desk, and stared at the monitors like they were windows into another world. The figure, my uninvited companion, was always waiting, sometimes distant, gliding among the graves as though searching, other times closer, just beyond the reach of the camera's infrared glow, a shadow lingering in the fog. And always, without fail, it turned toward the lens, as if it could feel my eyes on it. But the figure wasn't the only thing. Soon the monitors began showing others. At first, just glimpses. A man in an old-fashioned suit sitting on a headstone, head bowed, dissolving into mist when I blinked. A woman in a tattered dress, standing beside the chapel door, her face obscured by a black veil. Then a child, small, barefoot, running across the pathways, vanishing before reaching the next row of graves. None of them moved naturally. They stuttered in jerks as though the footage itself was skipping. One night, the screen for camera 4 went black. When it flickered back on, the child was staring directly into the lens, her hollow eyes wide, her mouth stretching open as though screaming, but no sound came through. The monitor shook, static tearing across it, and when the image cleared, the child was gone. That was when I realized something. The cameras weren't just recording, they were attracting. It was as though the very act of watching pulled them closer like moths to flame. They wanted to be seen, they wanted to be remembered. And the more I watched, the more they gathered. The radio didn't help. The whispers had grown louder, more distinct. Sometimes I could make out fragments. Why? Stay. Join. Other times it was clearer, voices weaving together in a chorus. He sees us. He hears us. He belongs here. I shut it off again, but the voices continued bleeding through the static, sometimes echoing faintly from the hall outside the office. I stopped patrolling the grounds. That was the point. Every time I stepped outside, the air thickened, the silence pressed against my ears, and I swore I could see shapes gliding just beyond the range of my flashlight. They didn't want me out there. They wanted me in here, watching. The worst night came near the end of that week. Around 2:30 a.m., every monitor went black at once. My reflection stared back at me from the screens, pale and wide-eyed. Then, slowly, one by one, the feeds returned. Only this time, they weren't showing the cemetery. They were showing me. Each screen displayed the office from a different angle, though no such cameras existed inside. I saw myself sitting in the chair, frozen, the glow of the monitors casting shadows on my face. And then, movement. Figures began to appear behind me in the screens. First one, then two, then dozens, filling the office, crowding the corners, their faces blurred, their bodies shuddering like broken film reels. I spun in my chair. The room was empty. Empty, yet not. The air felt thick, like dozens of unseen eyes pressed against my skin. My chest seized, breath catching in my throat. On the monitors, the figures leaned closer to me, their mouths opening in silent screams. The figure from camera 7 appeared at the center, towering, faceless, raising a long, crooked hand toward my shoulder. And then, tap. I felt it, cold, bony, fingers brushing the back of my neck. I bolted, stumbling out of the office, flashlight shaking in my hand, running across the cemetery path without looking back. The night swallowed me whole, the graves rising like teeth from the earth. I didn't stop until I reached the front gate. I rattled the lock, praying for it to break, to let me out, but the metal held firm. My breath clouded in the air, ragged and shallow. When I finally turned back toward the office, every light inside glowed white-hot, monitors blazing like eyes in the dark. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't guarding the cemetery. I was being watched by it.
I should have quit. I should have burned the uniform and never stepped foot in Hollow Pines again. But something held me, a pole I couldn't fight. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was compulsion. The cemetery wanted me back, and I went. Maybe I was too tired to resist. Maybe I already belonged to it. My final shift began like all the others, though the night felt heavier, the air thick with mist. The office reeked of damp earth. The monitors hummed louder than usual, their glow pale and sickly, as if the machines themselves were alive. I sat, trembling,
and waited. Midnight passed, 1 a.m., then 2. The screens flickered. At first, they showed the cemetery as usual. Then slowly the feeds changed, not all at once, but one by one. The chapel filled with shadows. The north field revealed the tall, faceless figure again, gliding between graves. The angel statue bled black streaks down its marble face, and then the passengers came back. That's what I began to call them. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, filling the screens. Men, women, children, all pale and blurred, their mouths moving in silent unison. They pressed closer to the cameras, their hollow eyes locked on me. Every screen became a window into the same nightmare, a crowd of the dead staring, waiting. The radio clicked on without my touch. This time, the voices were clear. Shift's over. Time to clock out. Time to join. The office grew cold. My breath fogged in front of me, frost creeping across the desk. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The figure from the north field appeared on every screen at once, towering, faceless, arm raised as if pointing directly at me. Then the lights in the office went out. For a moment, I sat in pure blackness, the hum of the monitors silenced. Then a sound, low, guttural, like stone dragging against stone. The door behind me creaked open. My flashlight rolled off the desk, beam cutting across the floor. And in that beam, I saw them. Feet. Dozens of pale, bare feet shuffling into the room, toes blackened with soil. I turned. They filled the office. The woman in the veil, the man in the suit, the barefoot child, all crowding in silence. Their mouths opened wide, stretching impossibly, filling the air with a scream I could not hear, but felt in my bones. My ears rang, my chest split with pressure. I clutched my head, gasping. Then the figure entered, taller than the rest, faceless, cloaked in black. It leaned close, breath colder than winter, and touched my chest with one long finger. My heart stopped. I don't remember falling. I don't remember the floor. Only the sudden shift of perspective, like waking from one dream into another. Now, I sit in the chair still. The monitors hum, but the reflection on the screens no longer belongs to me. It belongs to the others. I see myself among them, pale and hollow-eyed, pressed against the glass with the rest of the passengers, watching, waiting. And every night, when a new guard takes the shift, I see them too. I wait